Good evening. My name is Henry, though most people around here simply call me Uncle Henry. Tonight, my home is a little livelier than usual. You see, my two dear nieces are staying over, as their parents have gone away on a short trip. It's not often that I get to have them here with me, so I thought it would be nice to end the evening with a story, just as my own uncle once did for me when I was their age. Outside, the rain has been falling gently since dusk. Not heavy, not harsh, just a soft drizzle that cools the air and fills the night with a soothing rhythm. If you listen carefully, you can almost hear it tapping on the windows, sliding down the glass in little rivulets. The garden smells of wet earth and leaves, while inside, the lamp beside us glows warmly, casting soft circles of light that chase away the darker corners of the room. The girls are curled up under their blankets, eyes growing heavy, the steady tick of the old clock keeping time with their breaths. The room feels quiet, safe, and wrapped in a kind of stillness that only comes on rainy nights. I sit nearby, rocking gently in my chair, ready to spin a tale to carry them into sleep. And as I speak to them, you too are welcome to listen, to let the story accompany you, wherever you may be tonight. The story is called The Midnight Train. Have you ever wondered, what if there exists a journey no map dares to mark? A train no company admits to owning, yet every now and then, in the heart of a storm, it appears on forgotten tracks, calling passengers who never return. This story begins not with a scream, nor with an accident, but with silence. The kind of silence that presses against your ears when the rain has been falling for too long, when the city outside is washed into ghostly shadows, and the only sound left is the pounding rhythm of water against glass. On such a night, Ethan Ward sat alone at the deserted platform of Holloway Station. He wasn't supposed to be there. The official timetable showed the last train had left 2 hours ago, yet something compelled him not to leave. Perhaps it was the strange message he had received earlier that day, a message from a number he didn't recognize. Do not miss tonight's train. 11:59, Holloway. He had almost deleted it, thinking it was spam. But when his phone buzzed again, repeating the same words with no sender ID, he felt a cold unease crawl through his veins. Now, against all reason, he found himself waiting. The station was eerily empty. Neon lights flickered overhead, casting pale halos on the wet ground. The rain blurred everything beyond the edge of the platform, and the usual hum of electricity seemed strangely absent, as though the whole place was holding its breath. Ethan checked his watch. 11:57. That was when he heard it. Not footsteps, not voices, but the distant, rhythmic clatter of wheels on tracks. Impossible. The nearest train yard was miles away, yet the sound grew louder, accompanied by a low, mournful whistle that made his heart lurch. The darkness at the far end of the tracks began to glow faintly, a headlight piercing the storm. The train emerged like a ghost from the curtain of rain. Its carriages were sleek but old-fashioned, painted in a deep, fading green. No modern logos, no digital screens. Instead, ornate ironwork framed the doors, and golden numbers shimmered faintly on the sides, though the rain almost washed them away. The strangest thing was not its appearance, but the fact that the station lights, which had been dying moments ago, flared alive as if welcoming it. The train screeched to a halt right before him. Doors hissed open. A warm glow spilled out from within, golden and inviting, in sharp contrast to the cold rain outside. Ethan froze. Inside, he saw people, dozens of passengers, sitting calmly in their seats, dressed in clothes from different decades. A woman in a 1920s cloche hat, A businessman with a briefcase from the 1970s. A teenage girl wearing headphones that looked like they belonged to the early 2000s. None of them looked at him. They stared blankly ahead, as if waiting for something. The conductor stepped out. He was tall, thin, his uniform perfectly pressed, but his face. Ethan couldn't quite focus on it. It was as though a veil of fog lingered just over the man's features, obscuring them from recognition. With a voice that was both kind and commanding, the conductor said, "Ticket, please." Ethan stammered, I don't have one." The conductor tilted his head slightly, as if this were of no consequence. He extended a pale hand. "You have already been chosen. Step aboard." Ethan's heart raced. His instincts screamed at him to run, to get as far away as possible. And yet, something deeper, something he couldn't explain, urged him forward. His foot landed on the metal step, and the moment he entered, the doors shut behind him with a hiss. The train shuddered. Then, with a thunderous rumble, it began to move. Ethan turned to look back at the platform, but it was gone. Where the station should have been, there was only endless black, as though the world itself had been erased. And in that moment, Ethan realized this was no ordinary train. This was the forgotten train, the one that was never meant to be found. The moment Ethan stepped inside, warmth enveloped him, thick, heavy, and strangely oppressive. The air smelled faintly of dust, candle wax, and something metallic, almost like iron. The lights above flickered with a golden glow, casting long shadows across the carriage. At first glance, it looked like any other old-fashioned train interior. Polished wooden panels, velvet seats, brass handles. Yet the longer he stared, the more wrong it felt. The passengers sat in silence, rigid and motionless. Their eyes were open, but distant, as if their thoughts had been left behind somewhere far away. Some wore smiles too still to be natural. Others gripped objects in their laps, an old photograph, a broken pocket watch, a doll missing an eye. Every single item looked important, personal. Ethan swallowed hard. He thought about speaking to the woman nearest to him, the one in the cloche hat. But when he leaned forward, something caught his eye. The floor. The dim light showed his own shadow stretching across the wood. But hers did not exist. Neither did anyone else's. Ethan's breath quickened. He tried not to stare, yet his eyes betrayed him, darting from one passenger to the next. The girl with the headphones. The man with the briefcase. The elderly couple holding hands. None of them cast a shadow. He was the only one who did. The conductor's voice echoed suddenly, smooth yet distant, like it came through water. "Tickets, please." The man moved gracefully down the aisle, pausing at each passenger. But instead of handing over a ticket, each figure simply raised their object. The photograph, the doll, the watch. The conductor touched them gently, almost reverently, and nodded as if they had passed some invisible inspection. When he reached Ethan, he stopped. "And yours?" Ethan stammered, I don't have anything." The conductor's head tilted, his faceless expression somehow full of curiosity. "Not yet." Ethan felt a chill crawl down his spine. The train lurched suddenly, throwing him slightly forward. Through the window, he expected to see stormy landscapes rushing by, but there was nothing. Only blackness, an infinite void stretching beyond the glass. The rhythmic sound of wheels on tracks continued, but there were no tracks to be seen. Ethan sat back, trying to steady his breathing. That was when the girl with the headphones turned her head toward him. Unlike the others, her eyes weren't blank. They locked onto his with startling intensity. Her lips moved slightly, as though she were whispering. But Ethan couldn't hear her through the pounding in his ears. He leaned closer. "What did you say?" Her whisper grew sharper, desperate. This time he caught it. "Don't stay past the third stop." Then, just as suddenly, her gaze went empty again. She turned back toward the front, hands folding neatly on her lap as if nothing had happened. Ethan's skin prickled. Third stop? What did that mean? Before he could ask again, the lights dimmed, and a bell rang out through the carriage. Low, resonant, final. The conductor's voice boomed. "First stop. All who must depart prepare." The train slowed, screeching against invisible rails. Ethan pressed against the glass, heart pounding. Outside, the darkness rippled, and from it emerged a landscape that made his stomach twist. It was a town, familiar, yet wrong. The streets were empty, drowned in a perpetual twilight. Buildings leaned at impossible angles, and at the very center stood a clock tower with shattered hands, frozen at 11:59. The doors opened with a hiss. Several passengers rose at once, clutching their strange belongings. They walked stiffly to the exit, their faces blank. As they stepped onto the platform, Ethan swore he saw their bodies blur, dissolve, and vanish into the air like mist. Only one turned back before disappearing, the businessman with the briefcase. For the briefest moment, his blank eyes cleared, and Ethan glimpsed a flicker of pain, of memory. The man's lips moved silently, forming a single word. "Run." Then he was gone. The train doors shut. The whistle blew, and the journey continued. Ethan sat frozen, his heart hammering louder than the wheels beneath him. Whatever this train was, wherever it was taking him, he was now part of it. And the warning echoed in his mind like a curse. "Don't stay past the third stop." The train's whistle faded into the endless dark, and Ethan sat gripping the armrest, his knuckles pale. The silence returned, not the ordinary kind, but the kind that pressed against his chest, as though the train itself was listening. No one else seemed disturbed. The passengers sat motionless, shadows absent, eyes glazed, their objects clutched tight. Only Ethan's breath sounded real. Only Ethan's shadow stretched faintly across the carriage floor, trembling with each flicker of the golden light. He thought of the girl with the headphones. Don't stay past the third stop. What did she mean? What would happen if he did? And why him, out of everyone, was warned? The conductor glided down the aisle again, hands clasped neatly behind his back. When he passed Ethan, he paused briefly, head tilting as if studying him. Ethan tried to force out a question. "What is this place? Where are we going?" But his throat locked up. The words died before they could escape. The conductor did not wait. He moved on. And then, the bell rang again. Low, deep, final. Second stop. All who must depart prepare. Ethan's body tensed. He didn't want to see what lay beyond the doors, yet he couldn't look away. The darkness outside rippled, and another world unfolded. This time, it wasn't a broken town. It was a neighborhood he recognized. His neighborhood. Ethan's pulse spiked. The streets looked just as he remembered them. The row of brick houses, the leaning oak tree near the bus stop, even the corner store with its flickering neon sign. But the place was empty, eerily still, washed in the same twilight hue as the last stop. Windows were dark, doors hung open. Not a soul stirred, except on the sidewalk near his old house stood a figure. Small, fragile, a boy. Ethan's breath caught. His legs carried him to the window almost against his will. The boy wore a striped sweater, slightly torn at the sleeve. His hair was messy, sticking up in the same stubborn way Ethan remembered from childhood. Because it was him. Or rather, It was Ethan as a child. The boy looked up, directly at the train, directly at him. His eyes wide, frightened, pleading. He held something in his hand, a toy car, bright red, its paint chipped. The doors hissed open. Several passengers rose and shuffled out, vanishing into the twilight town. The child Ethan remained, clutching the toy car. His lips moved silently, shaping words Ethan couldn't hear. Desperation clawed at him. He wanted to run out there, to shake the boy, to demand answers. But his body stayed glued to the seat, frozen by a dread deeper than fear. Then the child dropped the toy car. It clattered against the pavement, echoing unnaturally loud. The boy's form blurred, flickered, then dissolved into mist, just like the others. The toy remained. The conductor stepped out, bent down, and picked up the little car with delicate care. He examined it for a moment before turning back into the train. When he walked past Ethan, he stopped. Slowly, deliberately, he placed the toy car into Ethan's trembling hands. "Now you have your object," the conductor said softly, voice almost kind. "Every passenger must carry the weight of their past." Ethan stared at the car, his throat dry. The chipped paint, the dented wheel, he remembered it vividly. It had been his favorite toy, the one he'd lost the day his father left. He looked up sharply at the conductor, but the faceless figure was already moving away, leaving Ethan with the object heavy in his palm. His chest tightened. He wanted to throw it down, to deny it, but his fingers refused to let go. The car felt alive, pulsing faintly, tethering him to something he didn't want to remember. The whistle screamed. The doors shut, and the train plunged once more into the void. Ethan sat rigid, the warning echoing in his mind, louder than ever. "Don't stay past the third stop." The train roared into the dark, its wheels grinding against unseen rails. Ethan clutched the toy car so tightly it left a dent in his palm. The object was warm now, unnaturally so, pulsing like a heartbeat. Around him, the passengers remained as silent as statues. Blank faces, empty eyes, hands locked onto their strange belongings, their tokens of another life. And still no shadows. Only his own stretched long across the carriage floor, flickering with every sway of the light. Ethan's thoughts spiraled. Why had he been given the toy? Why him? When the others seemed bound long before they ever boarded. And the girl's warning, it pounded in his skull. Don't stay past the third stop. The bell tolled suddenly, a sound deeper, heavier than before. Third stop. All who must depart prepare. Ethan's body stiffened. This was it. The darkness outside rippled. Slowly, agonizingly, a new landscape came into focus. And when Ethan saw it, his stomach dropped. It wasn't a town. It wasn't his neighborhood. It was a hospital. Floodlights flickered weakly, casting long shadows across the parking lot. The windows were dark, except for one room on the top floor, glowing faintly white. Ethan's chest constricted. He knew this place too well. He hadn't set foot here in years. Not since the night his mother had passed away. The doors hissed open. Several passengers rose and shuffled toward the platform. Their bodies blurred, dissolving as they stepped out. One by one, they vanished into the hospital's looming silence. Ethan sat frozen. His heart screamed at him to move, to get out before it was too late. Yet a stronger pull yanked at his chest. He thought of his mother's face, the way her hand had trembled as it held his, the words she had tried to whisper before the machines went silent. His breath caught when he saw her. She stood by the hospital entrance, fragile and pale, wearing the same nightgown she had worn the night she died. But her eyes were clear, warm, alive. She raised a hand toward him, a silent invitation. "Mom," Ethan's voice cracked. He rose instinctively, his body moving before his mind could resist. But then, a hand gripped his wrist. He turned sharply. The girl with the headphones was staring at him again, her eyes no longer empty, but sharp with urgency. Her voice was a whisper, fierce and trembling. "Don't. If you step off, you won't come back." Ethan froze, torn between the girl's warning and the sight of his mother waiting just a few feet away. The conductor appeared then, gliding soundlessly down the aisle. He stopped beside Ethan, tilting his faceless head. His voice was calm, almost soothing. "Every passenger must choose. Stay, and your journey continues. Step off, and you are free." Ethan's grip on the toy car tightened until his knuckles turned white. He could feel his mother's gaze pulling him, her lips shaping silent words he longed to hear again. But deep inside, a cold understanding slithered through him. The passengers who stepped off, they didn't walk into new lives. They dissolved, vanished, like smoke. Was that freedom or oblivion? The bell rang again. The train shuddered. The doors began to close. Ethan's heart pounded. He had seconds to decide. Step off into the arms of his mother, or stay aboard the cursed train into a journey with no end. The toy car pulsed in his palm. His mother's eyes glistened with love. The girl's whisper echoed in his mind. "Don't stay past the third stop." The doors clanged shut. The whistle screamed, and the hospital vanished into the dark. Ethan collapsed back into his seat, trembling, his breath ragged. His mother was gone. Forever. He had stayed. And now, the girl with the headphones leaned closer, her face pale with something between pity and fear. "You've made your choice," she whispered. "Now you'll see where this train really goes." The train thundered into the void once more, but something had changed. The air inside the carriage grew colder, heavier, pressing against Ethan's skin as though the walls themselves were alive. The golden glow of the lamps dimmed into a sickly amber, making the passengers' blank faces look even hollower. Ethan sat hunched forward, the toy car clutched tightly in his fist. His chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. The image of his mother's outstretched hand burned into his mind. He had chosen to stay. He didn't know if it was strength or cowardice, but either way, he knew there was no turning back. And then, for the first time, someone broke the silence. The girl with the headphones. Her voice was soft, trembling but clear enough for him to hear. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan turned sharply. Her eyes were fixed on him now, alive with something the others lacked, awareness. She looked like she was no older than 16, her hands folded in her lap, as though she were still playing the part of the obedient passenger. But her lips quivered with urgency. "What is this place?" Ethan whispered hoarsely. "This train, where is it taking us?" She swallowed hard, her gaze darting toward the conductor, who stood motionless at the far end of the carriage. Then she leaned closer. "It takes you where you can't let go." Ethan frowned. "What does that mean?" Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her headphones. "Everyone here, they boarded because of something unfinished. Regret, guilt, loss. The train gives them one chance, 3 stops, to step off. But they don't step into life. They step into memory, into the one thing they can't release." Ethan's stomach turned cold. The towns, the hospital, they weren't real. Her eyes flickered with sorrow. Real enough to take you with them. If you step off, you dissolve. You stop existing. Just another echo folded into the memory you couldn't let go of. Ethan felt bile rise in his throat. "And if you stay?" The girl's gaze darkened. She looked down at her hands as though afraid to speak. "Then you belong to the train. The words hung in the air like a curse. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears. He wanted to scream, to deny it, but deep inside he knew the truth. He thought of the passengers with their strange objects. The doll, the pocket watch, the photograph. They weren't souvenirs. They were anchors, weights binding them to the past, just like the toy car in his hand. And now he was no different. The whistle shrieked suddenly, slicing the silence. Ethan flinched, his nerves raw. The conductor began gliding slowly down the aisle again, faceless and calm. The girl lowered her head quickly, retreating back into the stillness like the others. When the conductor reached Ethan, he stopped. His invisible gaze fell on the toy car clenched in Ethan's hand. "You carry it well," the conductor said softly. "The burden fits you." Ethan wanted to shout at him, to demand answers, but his throat locked up again. It was as though the train itself forbade him from asking. The conductor leaned ever so slightly closer. Few survive beyond the third stop. Most long to dissolve into what they've lost. But you, he paused, as if studying Ethan with something that almost resembled curiosity. You will ride longer, much longer. Then, without another word, he moved on. Ethan's skin crawled. The air felt thicker, heavier. His heartbeat thundered against his ribs. The girl dared one last whisper, barely audible. "There's a fourth stop, but it's not a place. It's the end." Ethan turned to her, desperate for more, but her eyes had already gone empty again, folding back into the same lifeless trance as the others. The bell rang. The train shuddered. The darkness outside began to ripple once more. Ethan gripped the toy car tighter, his mind spiraling with questions he wasn't sure he wanted answered. The third stop was behind him. The fourth stop lay ahead, and whatever waited there, it was meant for him. The train plunged deeper into the void, its wheels clattering with a rhythm that felt less mechanical and more like a heartbeat, steady, relentless, alive. Ethan pressed his forehead against the cold glass of the window, but there was nothing beyond. Not darkness, not even emptiness, just absence. A place where the world seemed to have been erased. The toy car burned faintly in his hand, pulsing like an ember. He wanted to let it go, to throw it onto the floor, but every time he tried, his fingers tightened around it against his will. The weight wasn't in the toy, it was inside him. Across the aisle, the passengers had begun to change. Their faces seemed thinner now, their skin pale and stretched, their eyes sinking deeper into shadow. Their belongings, once still, now twitched faintly as though alive. The doll's one eye rolled slightly in its socket. The old photograph curled and writhed like paper in a flame. The pocket watch ticked violently, faster and faster, though no one wounded. Ethan's stomach turned. It was as if the train was feeding on them. He turned toward the girl with the headphones, desperate for answers. What's happening to them? She didn't look at him. Her head bowed, hair falling over her face. But her lips moved, trembling. They're being erased. Stop by stop, they lose what little of themselves remains. By the fourth stop, there's nothing left to take. Ethan's pulse quickened. And then what? Her voice cracked. Then the train decides. Before he could press her, the bell tolled. But this time, it was different. Deeper, louder, final. The sound rattled through the carriage, shaking the glass, quivering the lamps. The passengers stirred in unison, heads lifting, eyes glowing faintly like dying embers. For the first time since Ethan boarded, they moved with purpose, rising to their feet as one. The conductor appeared at the far end, his faceless gaze sweeping across them. His voice carried like thunder through water. Final stop. All who remain prepare. Ethan's blood ran cold. This wasn't another chance to step off. This was the destination. The train slowed, grinding, screeching, though there were no rails, no land. Through the window, the void outside rippled violently, and a new scene began to form. Ethan's breath caught. It wasn't a town, not a hospital, not even a place. It was a chasm, endless, black, yawning wide like the mouth of something ancient. From its depths rose whispers, faint at first, but growing. Thousands of voices layered atop one another, pleading, screaming, begging. The passengers pressed toward the doors, their lifeless belongings clutched tight. Their steps were stiff, jerking like puppets pulled by invisible strings. Ethan recoiled. "What is this?" he shouted, panic breaking through his locked throat at last. The conductor turned toward him. "The end of all journeys. The weight you refuse to release must be carried here. This is where burdens sleep." The doors hissed open. A gust of air surged in, cold and heavy, smelling of rust and ashes. The whispers outside rose to a deafening roar. One by one, the passengers shuffled out, dissolving into the chasm's lightless depths. Their belongings fell with them. Watch, doll, photograph, vanishing into nothing. No cries, no struggle, only surrender. Ethan stumbled back, his heart slamming against his ribs. No, I'm not going out there." The conductor stepped closer, his faceless form towering over Ethan. His voice lowered, almost gentle. "No one rides forever. Even you must give your burden away." The toy car in Ethan's hand seared like fire. He dropped it with a cry, but it stuck to his palm, fused to his skin as though part of him now. The girl with the headphones suddenly grabbed his arm, her eyes blazing with the last flicker of will. Her voice cracked, urgent and desperate. "You don't have to end here. Fight it. There's another way." Her words cut off with a scream. Her body jerked violently, her headphones snapping with a sharp crack. A shadow surged from the conductor's hand, coiling around her throat, pulling her toward the open door. She clawed at Ethan's arm, nails digging into his skin. Her lips formed the words one last time. "Fight it!" Then she was ripped away, vanishing into the chasm below. The doors remained open. The conductor turned back to Ethan, silent and waiting. The whispers from the abyss grew louder, pressing into his skull. He staggered, clutching his head, the toy car burning in his hand like molten iron. And in the roar of voices, he realized they weren't strangers. They were his own thoughts, his regrets, his failures, his mother's voice, his father's silence, his own screams from nights he couldn't remember. The abyss wasn't outside. It was him. The abyss yawned wide before him, pulling, whispering, devouring. Ethan staggered, clutching the toy car so hard his skin split, blood smearing its chipped red paint. Yet no matter how he tried, he couldn't drop it. The voices from the chasm surged, layering over each other until they became unbearable. "You should have gone with her. You weren't there when he left. You let her die alone." His own memories twisted into accusations, echoing louder than the train's wheels, louder than the conductor's silence. He fell to his knees, shaking, the toy car searing into his palm as if branding him with every failure he'd buried. The conductor loomed above him, still faceless, still calm. "Release it. Let the abyss take you. It is all you are." Ethan's breath came in ragged bursts. His chest heaved with rage and grief. "No." His voice cracked, small against the roar. He tried again, louder. "No, that's not all I am." The whispers grew sharper, piercing. The abyss seemed to laugh. And then he saw her. The girl with the headphones. Or what was left of her. Her form flickered at the edge of the chasm, half-formed, like smoke trying to remember how to be solid. Her eyes burned with defiance. She mouthed the words again, a desperate echo only he could hear. "Fight it." Something inside Ethan snapped. He rose, staggering, and pressed the toy car against his chest. The voices screamed, tearing through his skull. His knees buckled, but he stayed upright, teeth clenched. "This car," he shouted, voice raw. "It's not my burden. It's my memory. It's mine." The object pulsed violently, burning, splitting his skin. He gritted his teeth through the pain. "Yes, I lost it. Yes, I lost her. Yes, I couldn't fix what broke. But I lived through it. It doesn't own me." The abyss shrieked, 1,000 voices breaking into static. The toy car grew hotter, then suddenly, impossibly cold. For the first time since he boarded, Ethan's fingers loosened. The toy car fell from his hand. But it didn't dissolve. It shattered against the floor, bursting into light that spread through the carriage like fire through dry wood. The passengers convulsed. Their blank eyes widened, their lifeless belongings shaking violently in their hands. One by one, the objects they clutched cracked, burst, dissolved into the same searing light. The photograph burned. The watch shattered. The doll split apart with a shriek that was not its own. The passengers gasped, real, human gasps, and for the first time, shadows returned to their feet. The conductor staggered, his faceless head tilted back as if in pain, his form flickering like smoke caught in a storm. His voice boomed, no longer calm, but furious. "You cannot break what must be carried." Ethan stood, trembling but alive, the light pouring from the shattered car, bathing him in warmth. His voice shook but didn't falter. "I'm not your passenger." The abyss roared louder, but the train itself began to shake, groaning like a living beast wounded in its core. The golden lamps burst one by one, spraying sparks. Windows cracked. The floor buckled. Passengers screamed, alive again, shadows stretching wildly as the carriage tore itself apart. The conductor reached out with a hand of shadow, his voice shattering the air. "You belong to me." But before his hand could close around Ethan, the girl appeared again, her form clearer, her headphones mended, her eyes blazing. She stepped between them, lifting her own object, a simple cassette tape glowing with the same white light. Her voice rang out, strong for the first time. "No, he belongs to himself." The conductor howled as the abyss collapsed inward, pulling everything. The seats, the windows, the passengers, the walls, into its maw. Ethan felt the floor vanish beneath his feet. He was falling, but this time, he wasn't falling into the abyss. He was falling into light. Ethan fell, not through air, not through void, through light, blinding, endless, swallowing him whole. His body dissolved into it, his thoughts unraveling like threads tugged from an old sweater. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, slowly, the light thinned. Ethan blinked, chest heaving. He was no longer in the train. He stood in a wide, endless plain bathed in a golden dawn. The ground was soft beneath his feet, though he could not tell if it was grass, sand, or something else entirely. It simply was, and all around him shadows. The passengers, but they were different now, human again, color in their skin, light in their eyes, each still holding fragments of their objects, though the burdens no longer weighed them down. They looked free, confused, but free. Ethan turned slowly. In the distance, the girl with the headphones stood waiting. Her cassette tape dangled at her side, glowing faintly. She looked at him with something between relief and sorrow. "You broke it," she said softly. "No one ever broke it before." Ethan swallowed. "The train?" She nodded. "The forgotten train isn't just a journey. It's a prison, a cycle, for everyone who can't let go. It feeds on regret, turning it into chains. But when you fought yours, you shattered the rules. You set us free." Her voice trembled on the last words, as if she couldn't believe them herself. Ethan looked around at the passengers. They blinked, dazed, some staring at the sky with tears in their eyes. Others simply breathed, as though tasting air for the first time. But one question clawed at him. "Then what happens now? Where do we go?" The girl's gaze fell, her expression unreadable. "That depends on you." Before Ethan could respond, the plane rippled. The sky split open, and from the crack poured two paths. On his left, a return. Streets of his city. The ordinary world, gray but familiar. He could go back. Wake up tomorrow. Pretend none of this ever happened. On his right, a door of pure light. Beyond it, no images, no sounds, only peace. The kind of peace his mother had reached for in her final moments. The kind the passengers had longed for. The girl stepped closer, her voice breaking. Every soul that rode the train always had one final choice: oblivion or return. But we were never given it. Until you. Ethan's throat tightened. He thought of his mother, her hand reaching for his. He thought of the boy he once was, clutching the red toy car, waiting for someone who never came home. And he thought of the world outside, messy, flawed, uncertain, but real. His fists trembled at his sides. "I don't want oblivion," he whispered. "Not yet. I want to live, even with the weight, even with the pain." The girl's eyes widened, shimmering with something like hope. Then she smiled, faint and bittersweet. "Then you'll wake." The plane dissolved. The passengers faded like mist, some toward the light, some toward the world. The girl lingered last, her headphones glowing. She whispered one final time, "Remember us. Don't forget the train." And then, Ethan opened his eyes. He was back at Holloway Station. Rain pounded against the glass roof. The platform was empty, neon lights flickering. His hand was clenched. Slowly, he opened it. The toy car was gone. Only a faint scar remained across his palm. The digital clock overhead flickered to life. 12 o'clock. The last train had long departed. Ethan stood there, soaked in silence, his chest heaving. Had it all been real? A dream? A hallucination? Yet in the distance, faint, barely audible over the storm, came the low echo of a whistle. A train that was not on any schedule. Days passed, then weeks. Ethan returned to his life, or at least what was left of it. The streets were the same, the city unchanged. He went to work, drank his coffee, walked home in the rain. To anyone else, he was just another tired man blending into the crowd. But inside, something had shifted. Every time he closed his hand, he felt the faint scar across his palm. Not painful, but present, like a reminder carved into his very skin. A reminder that he had stood at the edge of the abyss and refused to surrender. And sometimes, late at night when the city grew quiet, he would swear he heard it. A whistle, low, mournful, far away, but unmistakable. The first time, he bolted upright, heart pounding, certain the train had returned for him. But nothing came, just silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. Other nights, he would dream. In those dreams, he saw faces. The passengers, free now, but still watching. The girl with the headphones, her eyes bright, her smile carrying both thanks and farewell. She never spoke, but he always woke with the echo of her words in his head. "Don't forget the train." He never did. And sometimes, on his evening walks past Holloway Station, he would pause by the platform, staring down the empty rails. The schedule board glowed its usual list of arrivals and departures. Normal, ordinary. Yet once, just once, he saw it flicker. A single line of text, too fast for anyone else to notice. The forgotten train, on time. He blinked, and it was gone. The rain began to fall again, pattering softly on the platform roof. Ethan pulled his coat tighter, turned away, and walked back into the night. But deep inside, he knew. The train was still out there, waiting, always waiting. And perhaps one day, when another soul clung too tightly to their past, when regret grew heavier than life itself, the whistle would sound again. It was nearly midnight when Ethan left the office. The city streets shimmered with rain, neon signs bleeding into the puddles. He pulled his coat tighter, half asleep, his mind dulled from long hours and stale coffee. The whistle came again, not faint this time, not distant. It cut through the city like a blade, low, heavy, vibrating in his bones. People on the street paused, startled, glancing around in confusion. But Ethan knew. His blood froze. He turned toward the sound. And there, beyond the mist and rain, Holloway Station glowed faintly in the distance. Ethan's heart hammered. He had sworn never to set foot there again, but his legs moved on their own, carrying him closer, step after step. The platform was deserted when he arrived, silent, except for the steady drip of rain. The schedule board flickered. He held his breath as the letters shifted, twisting into words that should not have been there. The forgotten train, now boarding. Ethan's chest tightened. He shook his head violently. No, not again. I made my choice. But then he heard it. A voice. Soft. Fragile. Familiar. Ethan. He spun around. There, at the far end of the platform, stood his mother. Her hair was just as he remembered, falling loose around her shoulders. Her smile was gentle, sad, exactly as it had been in the hospital bed that night she left him. His throat closed. "Mom." She extended a hand, palm open, waiting. Behind her, the mist began to thicken. Shapes formed within it. Railway lamps, an archway of steel, and finally, the black silhouette of the train itself, sliding soundlessly into the station. Its windows glowed faintly, filled with shadows shifting inside. The whistle blew again, rattling the very ground. Ethan staggered back, clutching his chest. No, this isn't real. You're gone. But the figure of his mother didn't move, didn't fade. She only whispered again, voice breaking like glass. "Come with me." The doors of the train hissed open, and for the first time since escaping the abyss, Ethan felt the pull again, stronger than ever, like the past itself was reaching out to reclaim him. The rain poured harder, drumming against the station roof like 1,000 restless fingers. Ethan stood frozen, staring at the figure at the end of the platform. His mother. She looked exactly as he remembered. The tired eyes, the faint smile she wore even in pain, the way her hand reached for him with quiet patience. It broke him. "Mom." His voice cracked, slipping out before he could stop it. She tilted her head, her expression soft. "It's all right, Ethan. You don't have to fight anymore. Come with me. We'll be together again." The words pierced through him. For years, he had replayed the memory of her last moments, the way he had sat in silence, unable to speak, unable to tell her what he wanted most, that he wasn't ready to let go. Now she stood there, offering him the chance he had begged for. The whistle moaned again, echoing deep into his bones. The train waited, its doors open, its shadows stirring. His feet moved forward. One step, then another. The scar on his palm burned as though warning him, but the warmth of her voice drowned it out. "You missed me, didn't you?" she whispered. "Yes." Ethan choked, tears blurring his sight. More than anything, he reached out his hand. Their fingers almost touched. The moment he had ached for since childhood, finally within reach. And then, the girl's voice. Not his mother's. The girl with the headphones. It cut through the storm like a blade. "Ethan, look at her hand." His chest tightened. He blinked through the rain. For the first time, he noticed. Her hand wasn't quite right. The fingers were too long, too thin, bending at angles no human hand should bend. Her skin seemed to ripple faintly, like mist barely holding shape. His stomach dropped. He stumbled back, heart hammering. The figure froze. Then her smile widened, too wide, stretching unnaturally across her face. Her eyes darkened, empty pools reflecting nothing. "You almost believed," she whispered, but her voice was no longer his mother's. It was the conductor's, low, deep, infinite. "You broke my train, Ethan, but you cannot break your grief. It will always call you back." The shadow of the train loomed larger, swallowing the platform in its presence. Passengers pressed against the windows inside, their faces blurred, their eyes hollow. Waiting, always waiting. The scar on Ethan's palm flared white-hot. He clenched his fist and shouted over the storm. "You're not her." The figure trembled, then shrieked, its body unraveling into a storm of black smoke. The illusion collapsed, sucked back into the waiting carriage. The doors slammed shut, rattling the ground. The conductor's voice thundered through the night. "You cannot run forever. The forgotten train never forgets." The whistle screamed one last time, shaking the entire station. Then the train slid backward into the mist, dissolving as though it had never been there. Ethan collapsed to his knees, gasping, the rain mixing with his tears. He was alone again, but not unchanged. For the first time, he realized something terrifying. The train wasn't gone. It was hunting him, and it knew his weakness. For days, Ethan barely slept. Every time his eyes closed, he heard it. The whistle, distant but insistent, as though calling from the edge of his dreams. Each morning he woke drenched in sweat, the scar on his palm throbbing with heat. He told himself it wasn't real, that he had banished the illusion of his mother, that the conductor was nothing more than grief taking shape. He wanted to believe it, until the others started hearing it too. It began at work. A colleague, a man in his 40s with tired eyes, asked Ethan suddenly, "Did you hear that last night? The whistle?" Ethan froze. "What whistle?" "The train, around midnight. Sounded like it was passing through the city." The man laughed nervously, rubbing the back of his neck. "We don't even have tracks near my neighborhood. Thought I was going crazy." Ethan's stomach dropped. That night, he walked the streets long after midnight, hoping, praying it was coincidence. But the city felt different, heavy, as if the shadows themselves leaned closer, listening. When the whistle came, it wasn't only in his head anymore. He saw curtains twitch, lights flicker in apartment windows. He saw others pause in their steps, heads tilting in confusion at a sound that shouldn't exist. And then he noticed something worse. Objects, scattered, ordinary things, an old teddy bear left on a bench, a cracked wristwatch lying in the gutter, a photograph fluttering against a lamppost. Ethan picked one up, a small toy soldier missing an arm. The moment his fingers touched it, a chill raced through him. A memory, not his own, flooded his mind. A boy crying at a train platform. A voice calling his name. Then silence. Ethan dropped the toy, heart pounding. The memory wasn't his, but it was real. The forgotten train was bleeding into the world. He began to see them more often. Little relics scattered across the city, glowing faintly under the streetlights if he looked long enough. He realized with horror what they were, the burdens of others, which meant the train was recruiting. The final proof came one evening when he returned to Holloway Station. He hadn't planned to. His feet carried him there, like a magnet pulling iron. On the platform stood a young woman, no older than 20. Her eyes were hollow, fixed on something only she could see. In her hand, she clutched a music box, winding it again and again though the key was already broken. Ethan's blood turned to ice. He recognized that look. He had worn it once. The whistle blew. The girl's head jerked up, and she began walking toward the empty rails as though in a trance. Ethan lunged forward, grabbing her arm. "No, don't listen to it." She blinked at him, dazed. For a split second, her eyes cleared and then darkened again, as if shadow had slipped behind them. Her lips moved, whispering words in a voice not her own. "All aboard." Ethan recoiled, the scar on his palm burning white-hot. The same burn he had felt when he defied the abyss. The train wasn't just after him anymore. It was spreading, and if he couldn't stop it, the entire city would soon be passengers. The girl with the music box didn't resist when Ethan pulled her back from the edge of the platform. She just stared at him with glassy eyes, the tiny box trembling in her hands as the broken key spun uselessly. "You don't understand," she whispered. Her voice was thin, almost brittle. "It's waiting for me. I have to go." Ethan shook his head. "No, you don't. That's not your voice. The train is." But she cut him off, her gaze snapping to his with sudden clarity. For the first time, he saw the person beneath the shadow. A girl, tired, worn, hollowed out by something far heavier than her years. "My brother," she said. "He used to wind this music box every night. After he left, I couldn't sleep without it. Now it's broken, and so am I." The words pierced Ethan. He saw himself in her. Saw the boy who once clutched a red toy car so tightly his hands bled, because letting go meant admitting the truth. He tightened his grip on her shoulders. "I know what it feels like. I've been where you are, but you don't have to give yourself to it." Her lips trembled. For a heartbeat, he thought he had reached her. Then the whistle blew. She gasped, her whole body jerking. The music box in her hand snapped open on its own, gears spinning furiously though the key was still broken. A haunting lullaby spilled out, warped and jagged, carrying with it a weight that made Ethan's chest ache. The girl's eyes glazed over again. She wrenched herself free from his grip, her voice no longer her own but the conductor's, deep, resonant, inescapable. "Do not steal from me, Ethan. She is already mine." The whistle howled through the station, and from the empty tracks, shadows began to rise. Tall, skeletal shapes dragging chains that clinked against the tiles. Their faces were hollow masks, their bodies stitched from smoke. They reached for the girl with claw-like hands, not to harm her, but to welcome her. Ethan's scar burned, his whole hand glowing white. He staggered, clutching it. "No, she's not yours." The shadows hissed, recoiling slightly from the light. For the first time, Ethan realized his scar wasn't just a reminder. It was a weapon. He thrust his hand forward, light spilling across the platform. The shadows shrieked, dissolving into mist. The music box in the girl's hand snapped shut, silenced. She fell to her knees, trembling, gasping as though waking from a nightmare. But instead of relief, she glared at him with fury. Tears streamed down her face. "Why did you stop me?" she screamed. "I wanted to go. I don't want this life anymore." Ethan froze. The station fell silent. Only the drip of rain through the broken roof remained. Her words cut deeper than any shadow, because he understood too well. Not everyone boarded the train because they were tricked. Some boarded because they chose to. The whistle rumbled again, distant but certain. And for the first time, Ethan realized something terrifying. Saving people from the train might not mean pulling them back. It might mean letting them go. The girl still knelt on the platform, her shoulders shaking as she clutched the silent music box. Her tears streaked down her cheeks, but her voice was steady when she spoke again. "You don't get it. I'm tired. I don't want to fight anymore. The train, it doesn't scare me. It feels like the only place I belong." Ethan's chest tightened. He remembered saying nearly the same words once, alone in his room after his mother's death, staring at the toy car in his hand. Back then, if the whistle had called him, would he have resisted? Or would he have stepped aboard without a fight? He crouched in front of her, his scar glowing faintly, casting pale light between them. "I understand. I really do. But the train doesn't give peace. It takes. It strips you until there's nothing left but shadow." She lifted her head, her hollow gaze burning. "And what's so wrong with nothing?" The words sliced through him. Behind them, the rails groaned. The air warped, bending with heat and shadow. Ethan didn't need to look. He could feel it. The forgotten train was near, waiting to claim her. Then, for the first time, he felt it. Eyes. Heavy, ancient, pressing against his skin. He turned slowly toward the end of the platform. The conductor was there. Not faceless this time. Not hidden in smoke. A tall figure cloaked in shadow, his face flickering between countless shapes. An old man, a crying child, a mother's smile, a lover's sorrow. Every form a reflection of grief, shifting faster than Ethan could comprehend. The conductor's voice rolled like thunder through Ethan's skull. "You resist what is inevitable. Every soul longs to unburden. She is mine. Step aside." The girl rose shakily to her feet, drawn toward him, the music box vibrating in her hands. "Please let me go." Ethan's breath came fast, his scars searing like fire. He could burn the shadows away. He could stop this. But should he? He looked into her eyes and saw not trickery, not possession, but choice. A choice born from pain, yes, but still hers. If he forced her back, would he be saving her or condemning her to more suffering? The conductor extended a hand of shadow toward her, patient, inevitable. "She calls for me, Ethan. You cannot save those who beg to be taken." The whistle moaned again, rattling the station glass. The girl stepped forward, trembling, eyes never leaving Ethan's. "Don't stop me," she whispered. Ethan's scar blazed with white light. His whole body shook, torn between instinct and mercy. The choice was his. The station seemed to hold its breath. Rain no longer pattered on the roof. The world had gone utterly still. Ethan's scar flared white-hot, light spilling from his palm like fire ready to consume shadow. The conductor loomed before him, taller than any man should be, his shifting face flickering through grief stolen from 1,000 lives. The girl stood between them, clutching her broken music box, her eyes begging, not for rescue, but for release. "Please," she whispered again. "Don't pull me back. Don't make me keep living when all I want is silence." The conductor extended his hand of smoke, patient as stone. His voice resonated through the walls, shaking glass from the windows. Every soul has its burden. Some choose to carry it. Others choose to let it go. You are not their judge, Ethan. The words cut deep. He remembered his own mother, frail, fading, yet smiling as she chose to slip away. He had hated her for leaving, but had she not made the same choice this girl was making now? His scar blazed brighter, demanding he act. To burn away the shadow, to shatter the conductor's grasp. His whole body trembled with the urge, but his heart whispered something else. Slowly, Ethan lowered his hand. The light dimmed, then faded. The girl gasped softly, her shoulders sagging with relief. She gave him a smile, small, fragile, but filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she breathed. Then she stepped into the conductor's shadow. The music box in her hands clicked once, twice, and then played a single clear note before dissolving into ash. The conductor's form darkened, his faces slowing their endless flicker. For the first time, he seemed almost human, his head inclined slightly, as though in acknowledgement. "You learn," he rumbled. "To save is not always to keep. Sometimes it is to let go." The whistle blew, deep, mournful, final. The conductor and the girl vanished into the mist, leaving Ethan alone on the platform. The silence that followed was unbearable. He fell to his knees, clutching his palm. The scar no longer burned. It was cold now, numb, a reminder not only of resistance, but of surrender. And in that numbness, a realization crept in like frost. The conductor was not merely a captor. He was a ferryman, a guardian of endings, and Ethan had just helped him. For a long time, Ethan sat alone on the cold platform. The echo of the whistle had faded, but its weight lingered inside his chest like a stone dropped into deep water. He replayed the moment again and again. The girl's tearful relief, the way the conductor had bowed his head ever so slightly before vanishing with her. He had expected fury, punishment, another night of torment for daring to interfere, but instead respect, and that terrified him more than anything. The forgotten train was not just hunting him, it was watching him, testing him, almost as if he wasn't merely a victim, but an apprentice. The thought made his stomach twist. He tried to bury it, but the signs only grew stronger. The next night, he dreamt not of the train chasing him, but of standing inside it. The endless corridor of dimly lit carriages stretched before him, each compartment filled with silent passengers, men, women, children, holding their burdens close. Some wept, some stared blankly into the dark, and as Ethan walked past them, something strange happened. The shadows shifted away from him, as if recognizing his presence, as if he belonged there. He stopped at one carriage. A man sat slumped with a cracked mirror in his hands, his reflection warped and broken. His eyes lifted slowly, locking with Ethan's. "You shouldn't be here," the man rasped, "unless you've taken the burden." Ethan woke gasping, drenched in sweat, his scar burning again, not with pain this time, but with a cold pulse, like the beating of a second heart. The next day, more relics appeared across the city. A child's shoe left in the gutter, a torn letter pinned under a rock, a wedding ring abandoned at a bus stop. Ethan felt them before he saw them, like magnets tugging at his scar. Each one whispered to him, each one begged for a decision. He realized, with dawning horror, what the conductor had meant. To save is not always to keep. The forgotten train didn't just collect souls. It weighed them, judged them, decided whether they boarded or were left behind. And now, Ethan was doing the same. When he tried to turn away, his scar seared like fire, forcing him back toward the relics. Every time he made a choice, burn the shadow or let it claim the soul, his scar grew colder, heavier, more like an anchor than a wound. He wasn't resisting the train anymore. He was becoming part of it. One night, as he stood at Holloway Station, Staring into the empty rails, a whisper curled through the air, not from the shadows, but from inside his own chest. The ferryman must always bear the scar. Ethan staggered, clutching his hand. The scar glowed faintly in the dark, pulsing in rhythm with the distant whistle. The train wasn't just choosing its passengers, it was choosing its successor. The nights bled into one another, each marked by the same haunting ritual. Relics appeared. Ethan felt their pull, and whether he wanted to or not, he was there, judging. Sometimes he saved them, sometimes he let them go, and each time, his scar grew colder, heavier, more like an iron shackle than flesh. The city had changed too. He began to notice fewer people wandering the streets at night. Apartment windows no longer flickered awake during the whistles. The relics, those fragments of sorrow, still appeared, but when Ethan touched them, the shadows recoiled more quickly, as though afraid of him. At first, he felt relief. Maybe he was protecting them. Maybe he was keeping the forgotten train at bay. But deep down, he knew the truth. The conductor was not gone. He was watching, and every night, when Ethan closed his eyes, he dreamt of the same vision. Two rails splitting into different paths. On one side, the forgotten train thundered on, endless, devouring grief. On the other, a station stood empty, silent, abandoned. A place where the train no longer came. And always, Ethan stood in the middle, scar glowing, forced to choose. One dream burned brighter than the rest. He stood once more inside the train, its carriages filled with passengers clutching their burdens. The conductor emerged from the smoke, his face steady now, no longer flickering, but fixed, grim. "You see it," the conductor said. His voice no longer rumbled like thunder. It was quiet, almost weary. "The train does not run without a hand to guide it. I was not the first. I will not be the last." Ethan clenched his scarred hand. "You want me to take your place?" The conductor's shifting eyes softened, though they never stopped glinting like coals. "The burden must be carried. If not by me, then by you. Refuse, and the train runs wild, untamed, devouring all without mercy. Accept, and you will choose who is claimed and who is spared. The city will know peace. For a time." Ethan's throat tightened. "And what happens to me?" The conductor's cloak rippled, revealing chains coiled around his body, feeding into the endless cars. "You already know." Ethan woke with a cry, clutching his scar. The pain was worse than ever, crawling up his arm like frostbite. The whistle howled outside his window, louder, closer, almost inside the room. The choice was no longer a dream. Take the burden and save the city at the cost of himself, or break the cycle and risk unleashing a hunger too vast to stop. The rails had forked, and Ethan had to decide which path to walk. The city was quiet, too quiet. For weeks, Ethan had lived on the knife's edge of decision. The scar burned colder with every night, chains of frost winding deeper into his veins. The whistle came not just at midnight now, but at dawn, at noon, echoing faintly through the hum of traffic, through the rush of rain. The forgotten train was no longer a distant haunting. It was bleeding fully into the world, and the people felt it. Neighbors spoke in hushed voices about dreams of stations that didn't exist. Children pointed at empty streets and swore they'd seen a black locomotive waiting. The relics appeared faster now, scattered across parks, sidewalks, doorsteps. Ethan couldn't keep up. Each one whispered to him, demanded judgment. He was becoming what the conductor wanted, a ferryman in training. But somewhere deep inside, Ethan refused to accept it. If there had been one conductor before, There could have been another before him, and another before that. An endless line of souls bound in chains, each thinking they were choosing for themselves, when in truth, the choice was an illusion. The train did not end burdens. It only recycled them. Ethan realized with chilling clarity, the only way to break the cycle was not to ride the rails at all. He had to find the third rail, the path the conductor never showed him. That night, when the whistle shrieked, Ethan didn't run to the relics. He didn't wait on the platform. He walked straight down the empty tracks of Holloway Station, into the dark where the train was never meant to be followed. Every step cut deeper. The air thickened, shadows rippled, and the scar on his palm blistered with heat until it felt like molten metal under his skin. But he kept walking. The world warped around him. The tunnel stretched longer than it should. Shapes moved at the edges of sight. Figures of passengers who had already boarded, their eyes hollow, their burdens glowing faintly in their hands. They reached for him, whispering pleas, curses, fragments of lives half forgotten. Still he walked. At last, the tunnel split. Two rails glowed faintly. The path of mercy, the path of surrender. The conductor's fork. But between them, buried in shadow, lay something else. A third rail, broken, jagged, sparking with raw energy, as though the tracks themselves had tried to hide it. Ethan stepped toward it. The scar on his palm seared so violently he nearly blacked out, but as his fingers brushed the steel, the shadows recoiled violently, shrieking as if burned. And then the conductor appeared. His cloak of smoke towered high, his face flickering wildly again, rage and desperation woven together. "Do not touch what you cannot comprehend," he thundered. "The third rail is not salvation. It is annihilation. Without a ferryman, the train will derail. There will be no judgment, no passage, only chaos." Ethan's knees shook, but he held his ground. Maybe that's what it needs. Maybe the cycle should end. The conductor's faces froze, all flickering, halting at once. For the first time, his voice trembled. "And if it ends, all burdens remain. Forever. Every sorrow, every grief, unchosen, unclaimed. Do you know what happens when grief has no place to go?" Ethan didn't answer. He already felt it, the raw current buzzing through the third rail, a storm of memories and sorrow too vast to hold. If he chose this path, he wouldn't become the next ferryman, but he might unchain the world's pain into something worse. His hand hovered above the sparking steel, scarred, glowing like a brand. For the first time, the conductor didn't command. He begged, "Do not do this." The tunnel roared with silence, so loud it seemed to crush Ethan's skull. The third rail hissed beneath his hand, sparks leaping like restless ghosts. The conductor towered over him, shadows writhing, faces flickering with fear, rage, sorrow. But this time, the power in his voice was cracked, brittle. "You do not understand what you hold. If you break the rail, the burden scatters. Every grief unmoored, every sorrow untethered. Humanity will drown in its own pain." Ethan's breath came ragged, his scar pulsing against the steel like a living heart. "And if I take your place?" he demanded. "What then? I carry the chains, past judgment forever, just another soul devoured by the train." The conductor's many faces stilled, his form trembling as if under some weight only he could feel. For a moment, Ethan thought he saw truth, just one face, human, weary, eyes hollow with centuries of sorrow. "Yes," he whispered, "that is mercy, that is balance." Ethan staggered back, shaking his head. "Mercy? Balance? You mean prison? You mean slavery? That's not life, it's a curse." The conductor's form surged higher, a storm of smoke pressing down on him. Better a curse than chaos. You are not ready for what lies beyond the rail. The sparks leapt brighter, searing Ethan's skin, but he didn't let go. His scar flared white, burning through the smoke until even the conductor shielded his shifting face. He saw it then, images flooding through him. Cities swallowed in shadow. Generations of conductors before him, each chained to the locomotive, each believing their sacrifice preserved the world. And beneath it all, an emptiness, a hunger. The train didn't exist to heal. It existed to feed. On sorrow, on grief, on the endless cycle of burden and release. And the ferryman wasn't a guardian. He was fuel. Ethan's stomach twisted. He could not step into those chains. Not now. Not ever. The whistle screamed again, louder than it had ever been, rattling the tunnel walls. The shadows surged, desperate to smother him, to rip his hand away from the rail. But Ethan planted his palm firmly onto the sparking steel. Pain tore through him, fire and ice coursing through every vein, every nerve. His vision exploded in white. The scar on his hand split open, light flooding out like a wound in reality itself. The conductor roared, not in fury this time, but in terror. Fool, you will unmake us all. The tunnel shook violently. The tracks shattered, rails twisting into molten shapes. Carriages of the train began to collapse in on themselves, passengers dissolving into fragments of memory that scattered like ash in a storm. And through it all, Ethan stood screaming, the third rail searing his soul apart. In that blinding moment, he understood. There would be no peace, no balance, no ferryman, only freedom. Whether humanity could survive it was no longer his choice to make. The whistle stopped. For the first time in Ethan's memory, there was no echo, no trembling in the air, no shiver beneath his skin. The silence was absolute, so thick, so alien. It felt like standing at the edge of a cliff with no wind, no sound, no heartbeat. The tunnel collapsed around him in a storm of sparks and shadow. The conductor's scream faded into nothing, dissolving like smoke in a storm. The endless carriages folded inward, each passenger scattering into fragments. Faces, memories, whispers, blown apart as if by a great wind. And then darkness. When Ethan woke, he was lying on the floor of Holloway Station. The rails were gone. Not broken, gone. The tunnel ended in raw stone as if no train had ever existed. His scar was silent. No heat, no frost, just a mark on flesh, nothing more. He staggered to his feet, heart pounding. The station was empty, utterly, perfectly ordinary. For a moment, he believed he had done it. He had ended the cycle. But the city told a different story. At first, people seemed lighter. Neighbors laughed more easily. The sleepless eyes of strangers softened. The relics that once haunted every corner vanished overnight. It was as if a weight had lifted. But soon, the cracks appeared. Grief had not disappeared. It had nowhere to go. With no train to carry it, no ferryman to siphon it away, sorrow lingered, raw, festering, uncontrolled. Arguments flared into violence. Lovers abandoned each other overnight. Children woke screaming from dreams they could not explain. People clutched their pain like open wounds, unable to forget, unable to heal. The world hadn't been freed. It had been unchained. Ethan saw it in himself too. Memories of his mother surged back sharper than ever. The toy car, the hospital room, the last breath she took. There was no veil between him and that moment now. He felt it as if it had happened yesterday and every day since. And for the first time, he wondered, had the train, for all its cruelty, given humanity a gift? A cruel mercy, perhaps, but mercy nonetheless. He had destroyed it, and there was no going back. One night, weeks after the silence began, Ethan returned to Holloway Station. He told himself he only wanted to be sure, to see that the rails were truly gone. But as he stood there, the air shifted. Not with a whistle, not with a shadow, with a whisper. Soft, barely audible. Every ending is a beginning, Ethan. He spun, heart racing, but the station was empty. Only his reflection stared back from a cracked glass pane. His scar itched faintly, just once, and then fell silent. Ethan closed his eyes, gripping the railing. The train was gone, but grief remained. And maybe, just maybe, something else was already forming in its place. The world had no ferryman now, but sooner or later, someone or something would try to build another. And when it did, Ethan knew he would hear the whistle again.